What if the janitor you walked past every night was actually the brightest mind on campus? Some people walk through the front gates of Harvard with confidence. Others arrive through legacy and donations. But Celeste Dawson entered through the side door each night with a key card, a mop, and a dream she hadn't dared to say aloud in years. At 1:42 a.m., Celeste pulled her faded work jacket tighter as she stepped into the cold, echoing hallway of Jefferson Hall, Harvard's prize science building. Her shift had started an hour earlier, as it did every night. While the world slept, she swept through the hallways of brilliance, dusting chalk-covered desks, wiping smudges from nameplates like Dr. Ellison and Dr. Wu, and emptying bins filled with coffee cups, protein bar wrappers, and the back of the napkin scribbles of mathematical genius. She never spoke to the students. Most never noticed her, but she noticed everything. That night, like many before it, Celeste moved quickly and quietly. But when she reached room 324, the largest lecture hall in the building, something stopped her. The chalkboard hadn't been wiped. It was still covered in dense, elegant equations that shimmered softly under the desk lamp left on at the lectern. Her eyes caught on a matrix optimization problem with a non-linear constraint, a structure so complex, yet beautiful, and somehow familiar. Years ago, back when she had internet at home, she had watched an open MIT course that tackled something like this. She had paused and re-watched it over and over again, long after her mother had gone to sleep, long before she had stopped dreaming. Celeste stared at the board for a long moment. Then, as if in a trance, she placed the mop against the wall, walked slowly forward, and picked up a piece of chalk. Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but with something far older and more deeply buried: hunger. Not for food or rest, but for challenge, for beauty, for math. She didn't erase what was written. Instead, she began to add to it. Line by line, she built upon the structure of the equation. Her chalk moved slowly, carefully. This wasn't guessing. She was thinking, double-checking, adjusting. She wrote the way some people pray, and though no one was watching, she wrote as if the entire world depended on each number being exactly right. In a parking lot, not far from where Celeste stood, Dr. Marcus Ellison cursed softly under his breath. He had left his notes in room 324 drafts for a critical symposium presentation. The final segment of his algorithm had taken him 8 months to perfect, and the handwritten components were too sensitive to leave unattended. At 2:06 a.m., annoyed at himself, he re-entered the building. He didn't expect to see anyone. The halls were dark, silent, but as he approached the lecture hall, he noticed a soft glow beneath the door. He opened it quietly. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. A woman. Not a student, stood at the board, dressed in janitor's clothes, her short curls tucked under a grey cap. Her back was to him. She hadn't heard him enter, but what caught his attention wasn't her appearance. It was her work. With perfect symmetry, she was restructuring the final constraint of his model, the one he hadn't yet solved, and she wasn't just doodling. Her math made sense. He stepped forward. The sound of his shoes startled her. She dropped the chalk. I'm sorry, she stammered. Her eyes widened. I didn't touch anything, I promise. His voice was low, measured. What exactly were you doing? Celeste swallowed hard. I was just trying to understand. It's a nonlinear equation with a nested objective, right? I wasn't going to show anyone. He stepped closer, eyes scanning the board, his brow furrowed. That's not a beginner's mistake. Who taught you to do that? She hesitated, then said softly, No one. I used to watch lectures from the public library before I had to drop out. He blinked. Drop out? From where? She looked down. High school. Senior year. My mom got sick. I started working nights. That was 7 years ago. Silence filled the room. Then, Dr. Ellison picked up the chalk she had dropped. He studied her notes. Then, without saying a word, he began to write underneath her formula. She stood frozen. After a moment, he turned back to her. You missed the coefficient of friction variable, he said, but only because you didn't know I introduced a new constraint yesterday. Her eyes widened. You're saying I was close? Dangerously close, he replied. Closer than some of my grad students. She smiled for the first time. I just wanted to see if I still had it. Math was always my language. He looked at her a long time, then nodded. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., my office. Don't wear the uniform, bring your brain. Celeste stared at him. Wait, why? He paused at the door. Because Harvard doesn't waste talent, not anymore, and I don't either. Then he was gone. For the first time in years, Celeste Dawson didn't feel like a ghost cleaning the halls of brilliance. She felt seen. And maybe, just maybe, she belonged here after all. The knock on Dr. Ellison's office door was soft, almost unsure. Celeste stood outside room 407 of the Pierce Hall faculty wing, heart pounding in her chest. She glanced at the time. 6:59 p.m. Exactly 1 minute early. She wore the only outfit she owned that wasn't part of her janitor uniform, light blue blouse and black slacks she'd kept for job interviews that never called back. The doorknob was cool under her hand. She knocked again. Come in, came the precise voice she remembered. She stepped inside slowly. The room smelled faintly of old books and lavender. It wasn't grand, but it felt important. A wall-length chalkboard filled with scribbles covered one side. Piles of papers, half-finished notes, and a single coffee mug reading "Math is only scary until you understand it" were scattered across the desk. Dr. Ellison looked up from a folder, glasses low on his nose. You're early, by a minute. She managed a small smile. I didn't want to be late. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat straight, hands folded tight in her lap. I assume, he began, you think this is a disciplinary meeting. She gave a slight nod. If I overstepped, I understand. You did, he said, but not in the way you think. She blinked. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Let's be clear, what you did with that equation wasn't luck. It wasn't guessing. That level of intuition comes from years of exposure. So why, Celeste, are you not in a university? She swallowed. My mum, she had stage 4 breast cancer. I dropped out to care for her. It was supposed to be temporary, but she didn't make it. And afterward, I didn't have the money or the time. Life got loud. Dr. Ellison didn't interrupt. He listened. I still study, she added quickly, afraid silence might end the conversation. Public library. YouTube lectures, free PDFs. I keep a notebook. But I haven't done anything real. I'm just a janitor. No, he said sharply. You're someone who learns without reward. That's rarer than you think. She finally looked up. He reached into his drawer, pulled out a slim folder. I ran your name through the admissions archive, he said. You were accepted to MIT on a full scholarship, top percentile in mathematics statewide. She froze. I declined the offer. They never knew why. They still don't, but now I do. He slid a page across the desk. It was blank, except for one line. If she still wants in, let her in. What is this? She whispered. An unofficial recommendation. I've submitted your name to the Harvard Extension School. If you pass the placement test next month, you qualify for the night program. I've arranged a donor. It's covered. No strings attached. Her mouth parted, but no words came. Why? She finally asked. Doctor. Ellison's eyes darkened, not unkindly. Because I've spent 2 decades teaching privileged students who memorize well and think little. You. You see patterns, you question, you push. If I don't fight for minds like yours, then what exactly am I doing in this office? She blinked back tears. You'll still clean, he added. For now. But if you pass, you'll clean less, study more, eventually, maybe, teach. Celeste stood slowly. At the door, she hesitated. Professor, that board, the problem I tried to solve, did I really come close? He allowed the faintest smile. Closer than I wanted to admit. She smiled, barely. And for the first time in years, Celeste Dawson felt like maybe her life hadn't ended 7 years ago. Maybe it hadn't even begun yet. 31 days. That was how long Celeste Dawson had to prepare for the placement test that could change her life. Each night, after her janitorial shift ended at midnight, she didn't go home. Instead, she slipped into an empty classroom, usually room 214, and began her real work. Surrounded by the smell of chalk dust and old floor polish, Celeste laid out her battered notebooks, a borrowed laptop, and printouts of advanced math problems. The first week, the security guards looked at her with curiosity. By the second week, they stopped asking. She became a fixture, a quiet shadow hunched under dim projector lights, muttering equations to herself as the hours slipped by. She tackled years of material: calculus, linear algebra, differential equations. She studied proofs and worked through theorems most students encountered over semesters, not nights. Her desk became a battlefield, a landscape of crumpled notes, cold coffee cups, and half-eaten crackers. Her hands were stained with graphite, her mind buzzed with numbers. And through it all, Celeste whispered formulas under her breath like prayers in the dark. Some nights, passing students sneered. Once, a boy laughed openly. A janitor doing calculus? Cute. Celeste didn't look up. She had heard worse. She simply turned the page and kept solving. Doctor. Marcus Ellison checked in only once. At 2:18 a.m., he cracked open the door to room 214. He watched from the shadows as Celeste's fingers danced across the laptop keyboard, her lips moving as she recited derivative rules. He said nothing. He didn't need to. He saw the work, and it spoke for itself. But it wasn't all steady progress. By the third Friday, exhaustion clawed at her. Near 3 a.m., Celeste stared blankly at a theorem she couldn't crack. The numbers blurred. The logic unraveled. Frustrated, she slammed her textbook shut. The sound echoed through the empty halls. "What am I doing?" she whispered into the silence. She wasn't a student. She didn't belong. She didn't have tutors or safety nets, just a mop, calloused hands, and second-hand shoes. Who was she kidding? Her head dropped to the desk. Maybe it was hopeless. But then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hard problems don't get solved in one night, but strong minds don't quit either. Celeste's breath caught. Dr. Ellison, he had never texted her before. She stared at the message, heart pounding. Slowly, she reopened the textbook, found her place, picked up her pencil, and began again. Night after night, Celeste kept showing up. She rebuilt her knowledge from the ground up, whisper by whisper, line by line. By the end of the 4th week, she had memorized the test format, reviewed 3 years' worth of advanced material, and more importantly, rebuilt a belief in herself she hadn't realized she could still access. Some nights her legs ached so badly from cleaning that she could barely stand. Some mornings, she stumbled home just before sunrise, crashing into a few hours of restless sleep before starting it all again. But something was different now. She no longer looked at Harvard like an outsider peering through locked gates. She looked at it like someone climbing the steps to where she was always meant to be. Celeste Dawson wasn't just studying for a test. She was reclaiming her life one midnight, one whisper, one impossible problem at a time. The night before the placement test, Celeste Dawson cleaned her last hallway, tucked her mop into the supply closet, and walked straight to the study room one final time. But tonight, she wasn't alone. When she opened the door to room 214, Dr. Marcus Ellison was already there, seated calmly at a corner desk. A cup of tea sat steaming in front of him. Celeste froze. "You're early," she said, half joking, half nervous. "You're predictable," he replied, with a small smile, gesturing for her to sit. On the table between them lay a small, worn envelope. Her heart skipped. "What's that?" she asked. Dr. Ellison didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pushed it toward her. "It's from your mother," he said quietly. "She wrote it after your MIT acceptance. One of the hospital nurses kept it. I thought you should have it now." Celeste's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded sheet, creased and stained with time. In her mother's uneven handwriting, it read, "My sweet Celeste, if you're reading this, it means you didn't give up. You are the brightest light in every room, brighter than equations, brighter than pain. Don't let the world dim that light. Keep going. Keep learning. Build something beautiful with that incredible mind of yours. I am always with you." Tears blurred Celeste's vision. She folded the letter carefully, pressing it close to her chest. Dr. Ellison said nothing. He didn't have to. At exactly 4:03 a.m., Celeste whispered, "I'm ready." By 8:57 a.m., Celeste stood outside room 501 of Harvard's Department of Mathematics. Spring sunlight spilled through the ancient stained glass windows, painting the marble floors in hues of gold and crimson. Her palms were cold despite the warmth. Inside the room, 3 professors waited silent, unreadable. Among them sat Dr. Marcus Ellison, his expression as steady as ever. She adjusted the strap of her second-hand canvas bag. Inside, tucked neatly between her notes, was her mother's letter. Her anchor. The door creaked open. "Miss Dawson?" the proctor called. She stepped inside. The room was cavernous. Ancient wood, towering windows, a single desk in the center. Her desk. No calculators, no electronics, just a pencil, a blank notepad, and her mind. "You have 3 hours," the proctor said. "You may begin." The first problem loomed, a tangled mass of nested matrices and nonlinear constraints, deliberately designed to intimidate. Celeste read it once, twice. Then, Slowly, her pencil began to move. Every sleepless night, every whispered formula, every whispered hope flowed through her hands. It wasn't easy, but it was possible. By problem 3, her shoulders relaxed. By problem 5, she lost track of the clock. But problem 8 made her pause. It wasn't about solving. It was about insight. Explain why the structure of this problem matters. Celeste froze. Doubt crept in. She wasn't like them. She wasn't supposed to be here. But then, quietly, another voice broke through. Her mother's. "You are the brightest light." Celeste gripped the pencil tighter. And she wrote. When the 3 hours ended, she stood up slowly. Her fingers were ink-stained, her back ached, but her eyes were steady. As she walked to the front to hand in her test, one professor leaned over and whispered to Dr. Ellison, "The janitor girl? Really, Marcus? Even if she's decent, what does this say about our standards?" Celeste heard it. Her hands clenched. She paused, just long enough to catch Dr. Ellison's calm, unwavering reply. It says, "We finally remembered what potential looks like." Celeste met his gaze, and this time she didn't look away. 3 days later, a plain white envelope slipped under Celeste Dawson's door. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a Harvard seal pressed into the corner. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside, one sentence stood alone. "Congratulations, Miss Dawson. You have been accepted into the Harvard Extension Program for Mathematics with full tuition awarded." Beneath that, scrawled in a familiar hand, "You didn't just pass, Celeste. You outscored every applicant. Welcome to the other side of the chalkboard. M.E." Celeste sank to the floor, the letter clutched in her trembling hands. For a long moment, she just sat there, letting it wash over her. Not charity, not luck. Earned. The first time Celeste walked into Harvard as a student, no one held the door open for her. She didn't expect them to. But she noticed it, the way someone who had spent years invisible always notices the smallest things. The classroom was sleek, modern glass walls, towering whiteboards, ceiling screens. Students filtered in with designer backpacks and carefully curated indifference. They carried MacBooks, designer jackets, and casual arrogance. Celeste carried a second-hand backpack and a scarf her mother had knitted the winter before she died. She found a seat in the back, quiet, small, forgettable. But she was not there to be noticed. She was there to learn. Dr. Monroe, a young professor with sharp glasses and a sharper tongue, walked in 2 minutes late. He dropped a stack of syllabi on the desk and surveyed the room with a smirk. "Welcome to Applied Structures in Nonlinear Mathematics. If you're here to be comfortable, you're in the wrong department." Some students chuckled. Celeste didn't. She opened her notebook and underlined every project deadline like she was drawing a roadmap to a new life. But comfort was never going to be hers. Not easily. By the second day, during group pairings, the whispers started. "Sorry, there must be a mistake. That's the janitor, right?" Logan Barrett, clean cut, top of the class, polished in every way that mattered to the old rules, said it loud enough for half the room to hear. The others laughed. Celeste said nothing. She didn't need to. Because when the first assignments were returned, only one group had solved the final problem using a recursive reduction model that halved the processing time. Celeste's group. Dr. Monroe paused the class to note it. "Who solved this?" Celeste raised her hand. The room went quiet. Dr. Monroe stared for a beat, then nodded slightly. Well, try not to make the rest of us look bad again. A few awkward chuckles. Celeste didn't smile. She just underlined another line in her notebook, her focus unshakable. But brilliance didn't stop loneliness. Celeste sat alone at lunch. Studied alone in corners of the library, walked home at night, past buildings she once mopped. The weight of solitude pressed harder than the hours ever had. Some nights she almost convinced herself it wasn't worth it, but then she'd pull out the letter, her mother's letter, and remember why she started. She didn't need applause. She needed foundation, and she was building it, one quiet, stubborn step at a time. 2 weeks into the program, the whispers turned sharper. Logan Barrett, still simmering after being bested during the first assignment, filed a formal complaint. He accused Celeste of humiliating him not by action, but by existing in a space he thought was reserved for people like him. Dr. Marcus Ellison caught up with Celeste after class one afternoon, walking alongside her through the polished hallways. "You've made a stir," he said dryly. She glanced at him sideways, notebook clutched tightly. "Logan's complaint," he continued. "He says you made him feel inferior." Celeste raised an eyebrow. "By solving the problem?" "By existing," Dr. Ellison said simply. She exhaled through her nose, a wry smile flickering and fading. "What did you tell them?" she asked. He smiled, faintly. "I told them the board doesn't care what shoes you wear, only what your mind can build on it." Celeste chuckled under her breath, the sound almost alien after so many weeks of tension. "Do you ever get tired of being right?" she asked. "Only when people stop listening," he said. That night, Celeste stayed after class to work through an extra proof on the board and open challenge Dr. Monroe had left hanging for weeks without a solution. As she erased the board, a quiet voice interrupted her. "Hey!" She turned. It was Jade Rivera, a girl from the front row, one of the few who didn't join the whisper campaigns. "That recursive model you built, I've never seen anyone approach it that way. Could you show me sometime?" Celeste blinked. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Then she nodded. Of course. It wasn't much. A single request. A single moment of trust. But it was the first brick in a bridge she had longed for, without daring to hope. Celeste walked home that night under the wide Cambridge sky, head up, heart heavy, but alive. Because numbers didn't care where you came from. Numbers didn't ask how much your shoes cost. Numbers only asked, will you keep showing up? And Celeste Dawson-tired, stubborn, brilliant Celeste, answered, yes. Every single day. By the 5th week of the semester, the buzz surrounding Celeste Dawson had shifted. Her name was no longer just a quiet line on an attendance sheet. It was whispered in the hallways, in library corners, and during late-night study sessions. Have you seen her notes? She solved the Monroe conjecture in 3 pages. I heard she used to mop this hallway. Some said it with awe, others with disbelief. A few with resentment. Because Celeste wasn't just surviving Harvard anymore. She was excelling. Still, not everyone celebrated her victories. Logan Barrett, still smarting from their earlier clash, led a silent campaign of exclusion. When paired with her for a project, he ignored her input. When she spoke, he rolled his eyes. If she was absent for a study group even once, due to her double shifts, he murmured that she wasn't serious, that she was just a novelty act Harvard had brought in to look progressive. Celeste said nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She answered the only way she knew how, by solving. And then, one rainy Thursday, everything changed. Dr. Monroe announced a midterm challenge, an optional problem set posted online. Whoever cracked it would earn a recommendation, letter a golden ticketto, any graduate program in the country. The problem was deceptively simple on the surface, a variant of Ramsey theory, but with a time-dependent matrix and topological constraints layered in. Most students glanced at it, blinked, and quietly closed the file. But Celeste stayed. She stayed up 3 nights in a row, hunched over library desks and the corner table at the diner where she worked part-time. She filled notebook after notebook with aborted attempts. She erased proofs until her fingers were dusted with chalk and her hands ached from gripping the pen. And on the 4th night, at 2:46 a.m., it clicked. Not by brute force, not by memorization, but by seeing the pattern hidden inside the time shift, the way chaos could be folded into coherence if you looked at it from the right angle. She used a harmonic fold between time states, a method no one had thought to apply before. It wasn't elegant, it was new. And it worked. At dawn, she submitted it. Later that day, her phone rang. It was Dr. Ellison. "I reviewed your proof," he said simply. "So did Monroe, and Liu, and Zhang." A pause. "They found no flaws." Celeste exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. But Dr. Ellison wasn't finished. "There's something you need to know," he added. She sat up straighter. "What?" "Logan filed a formal protest," he said. "Claimed you plagiarized it. Said someone like you couldn't have produced that work alone." For a moment, Celeste's stomach dropped. The weight of it pressed against her chest. "I can show my notes," she said quickly. "My process. Every step." "You don't have to," Dr. Ellison replied calmly. "I already did." He explained. He had documented her progression, every late-night session, every revision, every scribbled margin, and submitted it to the review board. "No one solves a problem like that by accident," he said. "You built it, step by painful step." Silence hung between them. Then his voice softened. "You didn't just solve the theorem, Celeste. You solved the part of me that had forgotten why I started teaching in the first place." A week later, the official verdict arrived. Valid. Original. Confirmed. Her name, Celeste Dawson, was listed beside the problem on the university board. Solved by C. Dawson, March 15th, 10:11 a.m. No fanfare, no applause. Just quiet, lasting proof, and for Celeste it was enough. That Friday, after class, Dr. Monroe handed her a sealed envelope. He didn't smile, but he said, "Not many people I'd write a letter like this for. Don't waste it." Celeste nodded, tucking it carefully into her battered notebook next to her mother's letter. Outside, as she walked past the reflecting pool, she saw Logan waiting. He leaned casually against the stone edge, arms crossed, smirking. "Still think you belong here?" he said. Celeste paused. She opened her notebook, flipped to a page filled with calculations, diagrams, the messy, beautiful evidence of nights spent building herself up. She held it up for him to see. "No," she said calmly. "I don't think I belong here." She smiled steady, unshakable. "I earned it." Then she turned and walked away. Not fast, not triumphant, just steady. like someone who knew the pushback was just another kind of proof. And Celeste Dawson had learned beyond any doubt that she could prove herself to anyone, including herself. The email arrived tucked between spam messages and a late notice for a library book she'd forgotten she borrowed. At first, Celeste nearly deleted it. Subject: Personal invitation from Dean Price. She stared at it for a long time before clicking. We would be honored by your presence at the faculty evening reception, Friday, 6 p.m., Pierce Hall Terrace. Formal attire recommended. Celeste blinked. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a prank. She was being invited. That Friday, just before sunset, Celeste stood on the marble steps of Pierce Hall in a borrowed black dress and a scarf from her mother's box. Her heels pinched. Her stomach churned. Inside, soft lights glowed. Laughter floated through the terrace. Scholars, donors, professors, people who had never skipped dinner to pay a bill clinked glasses and made measured conversation. She hesitated, and then she remembered Dr. Ellison's words. The board doesn't care what shoes you wear, only what your mind can build on it. So she stepped inside. At first, no one noticed her. She moved quietly to the edge of the room. She wasn't used to wine glasses or string quartets. But then Celeste Dawson? She turned. Dean Samuel Price. Tall, silver-haired, impossibly polished. He smiled, extended a hand. Your proof caused quite the stir. She tried to stay calm. Hopefully not the bad kind. On the contrary, he said, it's rare we see someone leap so far, so fast, from a broom closet to a theorem board. She stiffened. But he didn't notice. I imagine you've had to work harder than most. She nodded. It wasn't optional. And now that you're here, he asked, what's your goal? Grad school? Research grants? A tech firm would snap you up tomorrow. Celeste paused. I haven't decided yet. He smiled again. Well, if you ever want introductions, you're in the right room. He moved on. Others approached her that night. Some curious, some skeptical, some with offers that sounded like opportunity and felt like ownership. But none of them asked why she was here. None asked what she really wanted, until one quiet voice broke through. I saw your submission, said a woman near the refreshments. You didn't just solve the problem, you saw it differently. Celeste turned. Dr. Ruth Whitaker, the woman said, extending a hand. I used to teach here. I still show up at events like these. They shook hands. Tell me, Dr. Whitaker said. What were you thinking at 3 a.m. when you were scribbling that proof? Celeste blinked. I wasn't thinking about impressing anyone, she said. I was thinking about how time moves differently when you've spent years waiting to be seen. Dr. Whitaker nodded slowly. You're not here to chase titles, are you? No, Celeste said. I'm here because someone believed in me before I believed in myself, and because I have a little sister at home who still thinks janitors don't go to Harvard. Dr. Whitaker's smile warmed. Then make her believe otherwise. Later that night, Celeste stood on the edge of the terrace again, her glass still full. The compliments had faded. The lights were too bright. Dr. Ellison joined her. Survived the jungle? He asked. Barely, she said. His tone grew serious. You're going to get more invitations like this. You'll be offered things that glitter, but don't grow. Be careful what you say yes to. She nodded slowly. Have you thought about what comes next? She looked out over the campus. I don't want to just publish or sign deals. I want to build something. A space for people like me, who come in through the side door. He smiled. Good, he said. Then don't let the front door impress you too much. That night, Celeste walked home through the quiet streets of Cambridge. Her heels ached, the compliments blurred. But her steps were steady. Because for the first time, Celeste Dawson wasn't wondering if she belonged in the room. She was wondering how many people like her were still outside, waiting for someone to open the door. It came in a gold-embossed envelope, tucked between flyers for textbook rentals and a utilities bill. For a moment, Celeste thought it was a mistake. The return address read, Harvard Institute of Theoretical Research, Office of Dr. Helena Wu. Inside was a single page. Ms. Celeste Dawson, you are formally invited to apply for the Newton Hawking Fellowship, a research-based full-ride scholarship for candidates demonstrating exceptional potential in applied mathematics. The fellowship includes a private stipend, housing, mentorship under Dr. Wu, and publishing opportunities in top journals. Only 2 applicants are selected per year. At the bottom, a handwritten note. I reviewed your Ramsey proof. We need thinkers like you. Let's talk soon. H. Wu. Celeste didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. The Newton Hawking Fellowship was legendary. It was the fast track to a PhD, the kind of opportunity people sacrificed years for, and now she was being invited. Her meeting with Dr. Wu was scheduled for Friday at noon. She arrived 10 minutes early. The hallway was pristine white marble, silent, clinical in its elegance. Dr. Wu's office door was already open. Inside, sunlight poured over first edition books, framed research awards, and a spotless desk. Dr. Helena Wu stood to greet her. Elegant, imposing, brilliant. Sit, please, Dr. Wu said warmly. First, congratulations. Celeste smiled nervously. Thank you. You've impressed a lot of people, Celeste. What you did with that theorem wasn't just correct. It was original. And that's what we look for here. Celeste nodded slowly, unsure what to say. Dr. Wu continued. Now let's talk logistics. This fellowship requires total focus. Our scholars are fully immersed. That means no side jobs, no tutoring groups, no distractions. Celeste blinked. No work? Dr. Wu smiled, but there was firmness underneath. Exactly. Full immersion. We provide everything: housing, food, materials, even a stipend. You won't need to worry about anything. But we ask for complete dedication in return. Celeste sat very still. No work, no night shifts. No tutoring the local kids who reminded her of herself. No check-in calls to her sister between diner shifts. Just research. Just the dream. But at what cost? Doctor. Wu leaned forward. Let me be clear. This isn't about where you came from. It's about who you're willing to become. We're not interested in turning your story into a headline. We're interested in what comes next. That night, Celeste didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her small apartment, the letter on her nightstand. It was everything she'd once begged for, but now it felt like a door that might close others behind her. She whispered into the dark, if I leave everything I fought through, do I still carry the reason why I started? The next morning, she walked to Dr. Ellison's office. He looked up from a stack of drafts, already knowing. You got it, he said flatly. She nodded. They want me to walk away from everything, she said. He leaned back. They want the product, not the process. Celeste swallowed. What would you do? He shrugged. Doesn't matter. Ask yourself, what's more powerful, becoming what they expect, or staying who you are and still rising? 3 days later, Celeste returned to Dr. Wu's office. Are we welcoming you aboard? The professor asked. Celeste placed a single sheet of paper on the desk. Her rejection. Dr. Wu blinked. I don't understand. You're turning down the most prestigious opportunity in the program. Celeste stood taller than she felt. You offered me gold, she said gently, but my roots are still in the dirt, and that's where I grow from. Dr. Wu's expression turned cool. This will close doors for you. Celeste nodded. Then I'll build different ones. That night, back in her small apartment, she slipped off her coat and opened her notebook. She didn't have a fellowship. She didn't have a stipend. She had her shift at 7 p.m. And a dream that hadn't been sold, renamed, or repackaged. And that, for now, was enough. Harvard didn't make announcements when janitors became teachers. There were no banners, no spotlight, no front-page feature. Just a single email, room 214, Thursday, 3 p.m. Professor Liu is out. We need someone to cover the advanced recursion seminar. I gave them your name. M.E. Celeste reread the message twice, her fingers tightening around the phone. No ceremony, just trust. At 2:50 p.m., she stood alone at the front of the classroom. Same room, same floor. Same faint echo as the one she used to mop in silence. Only this time, she wasn't cleaning around the chalk. She was holding it. Students began to file in slow at first, then steadily. Some recognized her. A few whispered, "Wait, is that her? She's not a real professor, right? I thought she was just some scholarship case." Celeste heard it all, and she didn't flinch. At exactly 3:01 p.m., she turned to the board and wrote 5 simple words. What patterns do you miss? Then she faced the class. I'm not going to throw formulas at you for the next hour, she said, because recursion isn't about memorizing symbols, it's about seeing what others overlook. Repetition with direction. Loops with purpose. Some students shifted in their seats. Others looked intrigued. Celeste continued. When I was 16, I could solve any problem on paper, but I couldn't solve my reality. I had to drop out of school to take care of my mum. I spent years cleaning this building at night, and when everyone else went home, I stayed. I studied what others threw away. She paused. I wasn't supposed to be here, and I definitely wasn't supposed to be up here. She tapped the board. But sometimes, the most elegant equations come from the most unexpected places. Then she turned and began solving a recursive proof, the same one she had cracked alone at 2 a.m. years earlier. Her hands didn't shake, not because she was certain of everything, but because she had earned the right to be uncertain out loud on a stage with chalk in hand. By the end of the lesson, the room was still. Then, slowly, hands began to clap. Not dramatic, not forced. Just real. A sound she would never forget. After class, a student lingered behind. It was Jade. I recorded your talk, she said. I hope that's okay. It just felt important. Celeste smiled. Why? Jade hesitated, then looked up. Because I don't know anyone who looks like me that's ever stood there. Not until today. That night, the video made its way online. It didn't go viral overnight, but it traveled. From inbox to inbox. From classroom to classroom, from underfunded schools to late-night study groups. A former janitor teaches recursion like poetry. I showed this to my daughter. She cried. She's applying to college now. This is what education is supposed to be. Celeste didn't track the views. She didn't need to. Because every time she stepped into a classroom now, she heard the sound she used to dream about. The soft shuffle of notebooks. The flicker of eyes that once doubted, now daring to believe. And she knew her story was never just about becoming the teacher. It was about reminding others that they've always had permission to learn. The clock on the wall blinked softly. 2:04 a.m. Same building, same silence, same glow from the hallway lamp outside room 214. But nothing was the same. Celeste stood in the doorway, her fingers curled around a key she no longer needed. Not because the door was unlocked, but because now she had the right to open it. Inside, 5 students waited quietly, some with tired eyes, others with caffeine-stained smiles. All of them different backgrounds, different burdens. But they were here because she had once been. On the board behind her, someone had scrawled, "Midnight Mentorship, Session 1." It had started as a joke. Now it was a tradition. Every Thursday night after the campus went still, Celeste held open sessions for anyone who didn't raise their hand in class because no one had ever told them they could. She set down her bag and picked up a piece of chalk. "Okay," she said. "Who here thinks recursion is scary?" All 5 hands went up. She smiled. "Good. Then we're exactly where we're supposed to be." One student, a tall girl named Marisol, raised her hand tentatively. "Miss Dawson, how did you know you were good enough?" Celeste walked to the window, looking out into the quiet night. "When I was your age," she said, "I mopped this hallway. I'd sneak into this room just to touch the chalk. I didn't know I was good enough. I didn't even think I was visible." She turned back to them. "But I kept showing up anyway." A beat. Courage isn't about being sure. It's about being willing. As the lesson began, she watched the sparks catch. The way Marisol's eyes lit up when a formula clicked. The way someone whispered steps like a prayer. The quiet, sacred noise of minds being built. At the end of the session, Marisol lingered. "I want to do what you do," she said shyly. "Not just the math. The way you make people feel like they matter." Celeste placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already are," she said. "Just don't let anyone tell you the quiet ones can't change the world." That night, as the building dimmed and the students left, Celeste erased the board. Not out of habit, but out of reverence. Then she wrote one sentence in the corner. "She stayed so we could begin." Because this was never just about a girl solving equations. It was about someone who whispered to herself in the dark until one day, the world listened. And when it did, she didn't take the spotlight. She shared it, so no one else would have to start alone again. Sometimes, the most brilliant minds don't walk through the front door. They come in quietly, through side entrances, with calloused hands and second-hand shoes, carrying dreams they've long kept silent. Celeste Dawson's journey reminds us that potential doesn't come with a title and worth isn't proven by a resume. It's found in persistence, in showing up night after night, even when no one is watching, in choosing integrity over instant recognition, and in believing that one's roots, even the humble, painful ones, are not a burden, but a foundation. Her story speaks to anyone who's ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated. It tells us that it's never too late to reclaim your purpose, that quiet determination can outshine privilege, and that the truest measure of success isn't just climbing the ladder, it's reaching back, opening the door, and reminding others they've always been capable of entering too. Because learning, like dignity, belongs to all of us. And sometimes, the most powerful light in the room is the one that refused to go out.